Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest installment of Faith in Media Emerging Leaders. In our installment of talking with somebody that has found a way to utilize their occupation and also remain faithful in their occupation. We're grateful to be with you tonight. We've got Doug Chamberlain with us. And before we actually show Doug this evening, we would love to show you some of his work.
Hey, Jamie.
Oh, what am I up to? Just visiting a special secret client. I can't say who it is, but let's just say she bundled her dream house and her dream car for round-the-clock protection with Progressive.
Oh.
She has another house in Malibu. She's been an astronaut, an architect, a CEO.
We're in front of her house, dude.
Well, I'd love to tell you who her boyfriend is, but I don't think I can. I'd love to tell you, but I don't think I can.
Marty, only in theaters July 21st.
I'm not hungry.
What's wrong, sweetheart?
I miss Daddy.
I know. We all miss him.
I miss him more.
Oh no, I miss him the most.
I miss him a lot.
No,
I got missing
I
him.
literally miss him. I miss him so
Hey,
much more.
hey, everyone shut up. This filter makes me look like a cat. It's so funny, it's making me cry.
Okay, we're back. Doug Chamberlain, talk a little bit about those two spots. Give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, I feel like maybe they have sponsored the Faith in Media Emerging Leadership. We have commercials playing at the beginning of this. I mean, those are two longtime collaborators that I worked with on each one of those spots, and so I've done. I can't even tell you how many Progressive commercials I've done over the last like 6 years, but it's been quite a few with that director, and working with them has been really great and has afforded me a lot of opportunity. And then the other one with Will Ferrell was a director by the name of Clay Weiner that I've worked with for years, and for 9 years we did all the Sonic commercials with the two guys sitting in the car, and that was a PSA that he asked me to do, and he's really fun and crazy and the most just insane director I think I've ever worked with, and in all the good crazy monkey sort of ways. He's a delight.
Incredible. Incredible. Well, start from the beginning. How did you find film? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
I mean, man, how did I find film? Really, look, at maybe everybody's origin story goes all the way back to high school, but I had like a really good friend named Eric Swinson that was, he was my childhood friend whose like father was a fine art photographer in Dolores, Colorado. And he was the one that really introduced me to photography and like the art side of it. Is like, I knew about photography obviously, but he like taught me the zone system, and he taught me about fine art and black and white and all these like how to make beauty with photography. And I hadn't really seen that side of it before, but he and I were very close friends, and we would go to movies all the time, and I loved movies. And again, we were kind of exploring films and maybe more important movies than what I was experiencing, just by myself. But it was after my mission, I got married, we had a kid very quickly, and I kind of set aside the filmmaking ambitions that I had, and we because I had a kid, and I felt this like heavy weight and responsibility, and I was like, I got to get serious. I need to like provide this. I need to set this little hobby aside. And so we were living in Las Vegas, and my friend Eric, that same guy who'd been in film school up at you, and he came down and he brought with him this like 16 millimeter. It was an Arri S, I think is what it was, 16S, whatever it's called. It's like a little film camera that took 100-foot loads. And we went down to Las Vegas Strip and we shot some 16 millimeter. Oh, wow. So between that, and I was like, I just fell in love with the camera and just this idea of going down there and shooting. And then I saw the footage later, and I was just like, I don't know. It was like kind of a magical experience being able to shoot 16 millimeter film. And it was really fun. And then kind of concurrent with that, we had already had our first kid, and I was maybe 2.5 years into my business degree that I was like pursuing. And then we had I had an experience where I was supposed to be studying for a final for an accounting class that I was taking. And instead of doing that, I was like at the library, just thumbing through all the film books, and I got a C on the final. I was like,
Well,
what am I doing?
you're not a line producer. You're okay. You're okay.
Yeah. I was failing in that. And so at that point, I went back to my wife, and my wife's name is Emily. And, I remember that night, and she's holding Sophie, our new baby. And I think maybe Sophie was a year old at this point. So she probably had her on her hip. And I remember telling her, I was like, I don't think I can do this business degree. I'm just not interested. And I would rather be studying film. And she was just like, okay, like, let's do it. Let's go, And so, I mean, that was huge. She literally was just like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I think I want to go to BYU, and I want to study film up there. And she's just never even wavered at all. She's never questioned it. She's never, even during like all the really hard, challenging times when like money sucks and we're struggling to try and make ends meet and actually keep this thing going, she has been like completely and absolutely unblinking in her commitment to making this thing happen for us. And that's what it is. It's like, it feels like it's been our project, and, she's just been kind of amazing in this whole endeavor to like make this happen, So that's how it started, being able to have somebody like that who was willing to just go all in,
Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. Well, I think that's underrated, right? The support of a spouse, even parents. Talk about your parents for a moment. Your wife, extremely supportive. When you told your parents, give us some feedback on what they said and how they reacted.
Oh, my dad's always been super supportive, but he is not in the arts. He was not in the arts at all. He was a computer programmer, and he worked for an insurance company. And his whole idea was like, you just work a 9 to 5, and it's like you put your time in. And so that was kind of where he landed on things. But he was always very supportive. In fact, they would. He called it. He would always tell people that I was a cinematographer, and so that became in our family that my job is a cinematographer.
Yes, good.
Anyway, he would, when we were up in Utah and I was like shooting my first feature film, he would show up to set with my mom, and they would bring lawn chairs out, and they would sit and watch us shoot outside. They were really cute about it and really fun about it. So he didn't understand it, but he was like really supportive. And
that's incredible. Good. Well, you've mentioned some of your, inspiration, some of your mentors, but go a little bit deeper into that, because after BYU, maybe talk about your journey, AFI a little bit, but was there any one or two people that you look back on and you say, that was an inflection point in my career because so-and-so did X, Y, and Z?
Yeah. Yes. A couple things in there. It's like I did go to AFI after I finished. I probably left that out of the story, but and it was nice. So the difference there between AFI and BYU is like BYU felt very much like we at the time, and maybe this has changed a lot because maybe this has changed a little bit, but BYU seemed very concerned about what story we wanted to tell. And when I got to AFI, they didn't care what story we wanted to tell. They cared that we were using the visual tools to tell whatever story that you wanted to tell, and that we were using those visual tools accurately, and that we were able to tell a story using tools. And so the difference, it was kind of a marked difference for me in how those two schools kind of like worked a little bit. But yes, and then on the other side of that with the mentors, right?
Yes.
I don't know if I really have. I think I have like contemporaries that really influenced me, like people that I worked with that really changed the way and I mentioned Eric Swinson, and that guy was amazing. He's so relentless, and he was technical, and he had, it's just like if he was doing if he had an idea for a series, he would do like 100 images, and he's still, to this day, he's an amazing photographer and is still very prolific and very active and very much involved in the arts community. I mean, I had this friend named CJ who I worked with in Vegas, and we were just like two guys working in the warehouse at the film company, or this like film and chemical company, and we were just like coming up with all kinds of ideas and like sharing ambitions and trying to get things going, So he was like influential in getting me and helping me even go to BYU and make all those decisions. And then of course, like Aaron Rule from, who played Kip in Napoleon Dynamite, he ended up being huge influence, man, just massive, because we went to school together and we did a couple of short films that got into Sundance after Napoleon Dynamite. But man, he just killed it when it came to commercials. He had such a clear vision of what he wanted to do. He was like so good with like one, having a vision, but casting and art direction, and his ability to take like a style or a vibe and put that into his commercials. So that's what we were doing a lot of. And then the subtle little directions that he would give that were so funny. It was like he kind of opened up my mind. And I don't think I was ever the same after working with him. Like whatever I thought I was doing, it like changed working with Aaron, and that set me up for, all the commercial work that I've done since. Is like the impetus of that really was working with Aaron, and I think
Incredible.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of others, there's a still photographer friend that I have right now who's just won just about every award that you can win in still photography. And it's like his use of natural light and dark and lonely images and thoughtful images, super detail oriented, and he's been a huge help. And so I've had a bunch of them, but even, probably too many I mentioned. Now I'm starting to think, oh crap, how many have I missed?
Who did you leave out, right? Who did you?
I know. Like Kat's been a huge.
Blame it on me, because we'll move on to the next topic. How does that sound?
Yeah.
All right. No, this is great. So you mentioned Napoleon Dynamite. I think we also alluded to She-Hulk, the Marvel universe as well. You've done some stuff there. Talk a little bit about, these are, Napoleon, nobody knew that would blow up like it did, but I think the principle is still the same. Film sets can be really high pressure, right? They're high pressure spaces. How do you stay grounded? We're going to bring in maybe a little bit of your faith, maybe your beliefs, maybe your values into this discussion, but talk a little bit about, what you see, because you're in Hollywood, you're in LA, high pressure. What do you see, those that can remain grounded on set and can actually get the stuff done? What do you feel you have, and what do you feel others have that might help them do that?
That's a really good question, because it's something that I think you struggle with like your entire career, because it's like every new scenario is like a new, just working in the industry. It's a rich environment that has plentiful opportunities for conflict and disagreements, creative disagreements.
Yeah.
And you're working with like some crazy people, and that's part of the charm of it. That's part of the fun of it, is like you do have like these monkeys on one side and robots on the other. And it kind of takes this contrast and conflict in order to make these things sometimes. And so, there is a lot of opportunity to learn how to deal with like conflict resolution and how to like swallow your pride and try and be humble and do that. I think a lot of it, I think early on I would have said that being a dad and having a family was a great deal of help, because it taught me a lot of patience. And, there are childish things happening on set. So maybe that fits, but it's also, it helps you really to keep like the whole thing in perspective when you have the family at home, and you start to realize that like the job is very important, right? It's very important because each job that I have, and I'm fired at the end of every single job. Like I don't I don't have something on the heels of it every time, you know? So it's like at the end of every job, it's like, okay, that's it. We may never work with you again. So it's important to maintain all those relationships. And if you're going to have a career in it, it's like, it's really important. But I think the best thing that I've been able to do is to not take it that serious, if that makes sense. Like I've had to I can't be creative if I'm too wound up, if there's too much pressure on me. It's almost like it's too important. I think there's somebody that said this as something is like, whatever. It's like too important to be taken serious. And I feel that way. It's like, I have to have my fun and I have to have my creativity going.
While we're on this topic, I'm assuming every cinematographer has a trial by fire experience, right? You leave gear that you need and you have to MacGyver it together, right? Or or something happens, right? Somebody just goes ballistic on set and you've got to, bring whatever skill set you have to bear to really make it work. Give us an experience where that happened and how you contributed to hopefully the resolution and not the not the problem. The set down, right? Yeah.
I don't know. I was like immediately thought of moments where I think I was the problem. So those are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head. I do remember I took a trip to China and we went out there for like a month, and maybe it was like 3 weeks or something like this. And I was camera assistant on it, and I just didn't check all the equipment. I was young. And so I was like, oh, here's the matte box. I'm sure that fits on the camera. And so I checked out a lot of things, but there was a couple little things that I missed. And that was a huge lesson for me in terms of because we got out there and the matte box didn't fit on the lens, and we were shooting 16 millimeter, which means we were dropping NDs in for every single shot. And so I was going through every roll of tape that I had, trying to tape a filter onto the front of that lens. It's like, yeah, that was a huge lesson in just being an idiot. But that's probably not trial by fire. That was just me being stupid. I think probably my, maybe just looking back at like the first feature I shot was with this guy named Andrew Black and his wife, Ann Black, who's a production designer, and she's amazing. But at the time, it was my first feature, and there was a lot of stress about, trying to get this right and trying to do a good job on this. And Ann and I were just in conflict with each other and just battling each other over things. And we just saw and just had different visions. And then I was young and probably arrogant, thinking that I knew better, and who knows where the immaturity brought the conflict. But it was a hard relationship during that film, and but I had to humble myself and go and realize how much she actually cared about the project and how much she was invested in it. And I had an opportunity, not that. Maybe it was later that year, I had an opportunity to direct this little TV show thing that was going. It went straight to video, but I was directing it and shooting it, and I was trying to find a production designer to come in and be a part of it. And the only thing I could think of was having Anne come in and be the production designer on this thing.
Oh, that's great.
And brought her in, and she just killed it and was so amazing, and we were able to kind of address that kind of thing. It's not really trial by fire, but it shows you
come full circle, right? And you can work through things and not only want to work with that person again, but invite them back onto set with you when you have that ability. And it works potentially better than it did before, right?
I have a great relationship with Anne. She's been just a great collaborator over the years, and it's just been amazing. We later did another feature together, and she's one of my favorites, and it's been that's been a good relationship, I guess. But there's a lot of opportunities for getting burned in the industry, and it's fun. Yeah.
Well, we've got some great questions coming in. Many of them are skill set based, directly toward what you do as a cinematographer. I before we hit those, though, I want to hit a few that some are asking about faith in media specifically. We're here tonight because of faith in media, right? The importance of faith in media. And this is totally an unscripted question, so it's going to be a totally unscripted answer. But from your vantage point, what is your belief regarding faith in media? What does it look like from your point of view right now? You're in LA, in the Hollywood area. What do you see happening out there? And again, this is totally your opinion, and so we want to hear your opinion because you're in the middle of it.
So, are you talking like faith-based films in media, or are you talking like seeing faith in media, or are you talking about being faithful and working in media?
Yeah, let's talk
That's
about
kind of like
being faith. Yeah, it could be all of those, right? Let's talk first. I think the first aspect about being faithful and being in media, right? How do you maintain your religious rites and rituals or your spirituality on one hand and have the other foot, in the occupation you're in? Is it hard? What do you run into on a daily basis? And maybe what keeps you grounded in that? Because you've been able to successfully do that to some extent, right?
Yeah. Boy, it's like, I think there's different eras that I've attacked that in different ways, right? So clearly my wife has always been this, like, she doesn't question things, and she, in a good way. Do you know what I mean? Like, she has like a lot of faith, and she is just like, this is what we're doing. And she's just all in. And so, I mean, one, that's been like a huge help to me. But, I think early on, because of my association with like Napoleon Dynamite, and people would always want to know about that and ask me about that, they always assumed that I was a member of the church because that came out of BYU and out of Utah. And so there was always that was going on. And then my first going into my career, I was working with Aaron Rule, who was, a member of the church. And so we were always getting, it was like we were automatically wearing it on our sleeves that we were members of the church. And so I don't know, I never felt any sort of real and like any antagonism or anything like that. It's like it felt pretty normal, and it actually was nice to get some of that stuff out in the open so we can talk about it, and if people did have questions, and so it didn't seem out of the ordinary, I think, for me. And then I don't know, I wish I had an amazing answer for how to navigate that, because I feel like it's just been, we just stay in it. Like, that's it. I just like stay on the boat and just keep going. And I think over the years, I've actually developed better answers for it, because I've seen more and more that, that I've learned from like studying scripture, or studying, like digging into talks and my experiences in the temple, that I'm like, now I look at it from kind of a different perspective. So I almost have a hard time going back in time and trying to understand who that guy was and what his opinions were about why I'm staying faithful. I think ultimately I just keep digging at it, and I just keep finding great answers, and I keep loving it. And so I just keep going with it. And the number of times that I've had conversations on set with my key grip is somebody that I love chatting with the gospel about, but sometimes I don't know, I'm not sure he knows I'm talking about the covenants, Right. And so I'll go through like the covenants but it's almost like a challenge of being able to talk about them in such a way that is not like on the nose, I'm not using the language, but I'm talking about those things. And, we end up in pretty good relationships. I mean, I can give you like an example of something that I've been using lately that I have found to be incredibly helpful to me. As a cinematographer, we typically have some sort of conflict on set with, and it's usually like production design. I mean, I just told the story about how my first trial by fire was with a production designer that I now love, but it's just, that those are two departments that are kind of beneath that director, but then are also working creatively with him, but then they can kind of like have a natural conflict. And so there's some production designers that are really good, and some are really arrogant and pushy and then leave you hanging. And I don't know, there's all kinds of things that can happen. But I have found that there's like one principle that I've really adopted from the temple that I think has really helped me and has changed my behavior as I approach people, is like is this idea of what death is. And it's like in the temple we learned, and in the first book of Genesis we learned that death is separation. So it's our spiritual death is us separating from God, and our temporal death is when our spirits separate. So anything that separates is death. And that's why we're created from the dust of the earth, and so life is created when you take all these disparate elements and you make them into one, and they become one in purpose, and then when you separate all those things, that creates death. And so I've kind of looked at my relationship with crew members and all the things that are happening on set. I look at it from that perspective and through that lens, where I say to myself, it's like, okay, in this situation, am I creating oneness with this production designer and with this team, or am I saying things that's creating death in the relationships? Am I killing the project, or am I creating life inside the project? So I'm very careful about complaining about somebody on set. If they're not there, it's like I try my hardest not to go to the director or go to the AD or some production and just piss and moan about this person that I'm not liking and why this whole thing's failing because of them. Because I'm like, oh, that truly creates death and separation. And so I try and find ways to be helpful and get my crew involved in supporting that art department or supporting that whatever department. I'm picking on our department, but actually I have pretty great relationships with a lot of art departments. Yeah, but in everything that I'm doing now, I'm trying to see that gospel principle applied to those relationships. So that's it may be an example of utilizing these truths that we find in our religion or in faith that we can apply to our work and the way we operate. And I think that stuff is that's like an effort to live your religious beliefs. Yeah. It's like find an application for all of those things. And I think I found a number of things, especially in the temple. And as I go through the covenants, I think, the covenants in the temple are really about progression. And how do we progress? And it's like, if you want to progress in your career, if you want to progress in your marriage, you can apply all those principles. They don't, I think, and maybe I shouldn't say this because it'll open up a lot of questions, but I think Quentin Tarantino is really good at living the law of consecration when it comes to application to his filmmaking. I'm not saying he lives it inside the church, but he follows a number of those same principles applied to his filmmaking. And you can, when you can really kind of break it down, it gets quite fascinating how well the principles apply. And you can look at anybody who's had any sort of success. And I think what you'll find is we like to think of people who are successful as only being just arrogant and self-centered or something like that. And it's the reality is there's always an element of humility and putting the project before themselves. And, there's some true, honest principles in there for anybody who's successful.
So good. So good. If we have time, we'll come back to the Tarantino law of consecration.
Oh, I mean,
but let's not go there yet, because that might be a rabbit hole.
Hour. Yeah, that's a rabbit hole.
Tell me this, and then we're going to directly hit some student questions and audience questions. So knowing what you know now, and again, the industry has changed and evolved since you first stepped foot in California. Knowing what you know now, though, what would you tell the 22, 23-year-old Doug Chamberlain, if you were to come to LA today to do something in LA, now that you have this under your belt, what would you tell somebody? What would you tell that young Doug Chamberlain, that individual that's graduating from BYU or anywhere across the United States or anywhere in the world if they come to LA?
It's going to take 5 years to do anything. So don't let that, you got to have a plan, you got to have some staying power. And so you got to situate yourself so you got some staying power and that you can get to that 5 or maybe even longer mark where you can actually start making money in it. Cause it's tough. It's not handed to you. And if it is handed to you, you need to be saving your pennies at that point and figuring out how to do that. I think it's a tough industry to get into. But what else would I tell myself? Boy, it is a good question. Because I oftentimes wonder, like, how did I do this? Right. I've thought about this many times where I've thought, because people have asked me, how do you get going? How do I get started? And my answer far more often is like, I have no idea how people do it. I have no idea how, like, I came to LA and made it happen and like raised 4 kids. And it's like each one of those little decisions along the way was like a moment where we were like, oh, crap, how are we going to do this with our particular situation? And you have to like, okay. And you make a move and you're like, all right, was that the right move? Maybe. Who cares? Let's live with it and let's go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you have to be able to be like nimble and go and be ambitious, and have some thick skin, because what I think I discovered early on was that I always knew that you needed to have thick skin in this industry. What I didn't know that it was, I could handle rejection. I could handle it from outside of my circle of friends and everything like that. But it was when it came from inside, like these people that I loved and admired, and I put them up on a pedestal and had such high regard for certain people. When those people reject you and kick you out of their life, it's like, it's brutal. And it just, it hurts in all different directions, where you feel a lot of like, toughness. And so it's in those moments that you've got to like, you got to dig and figure out what you want to do, and it refines you and it makes you a little bit better, and it teaches you how to move forward. But without those moments, I certainly wouldn't be the cinematographer that I am without going through some harder situations. They give me confidence when I enter into any job now, that I just like, I think early on in my career, I probably had moments where I was like sick to my stomach or had a hard time sleeping the night before. And I don't have that as much. And so, I think I've learned a few things and been in a few situations that I am, much more unafraid of whatever the day is going to throw at me. So I think that just comes with time. And, if you want to tie that back to a principle, right? It's like, that is the line upon line. Like, we don't, we in our prayers, if we really want to figure out, what the Lord wants you to do, is like in the temple, the first law is the law of obedience. And the question you ask yourself is, obedient to what? And if you go and take a prayer and say, give me one law you want me to live right now, just give me the one thing to do right now, it's like, you're going to get an answer. You come to the Lord with just like, can you fix this problem? Can you make everything better? It's like, that's a hard thing to get a real clear answer on, because you don't typically catch the whole vision of this is how it's going to work for the next 10 years and just follow this plan. Like, it's never like that. It is always a do this next and then then I can help you from there. And sometimes the answer is like, dude, go for a walk, or write in your journal. And you're like, that seems like a weird answer. And then you sit down and you start writing, and that leads you to one thing and another thing, and it introduces you to somebody that, you know what I mean? It's like, you don't know.
All right, we're going to jump into some audience questions now. Again, I don't know what these are. You don't know what these are, so we'll both be surprised. This is from Isaac. He says, hey, Doug, I'm Isaac. I'm in the film program at BYU, and I'm interested in directing, DPing narrative work, but I'll likely pursue advertising. What career advice do you have for somebody looking to branch between narrative plus the advertising world?
Boy, that is the dream, to bounce between those two worlds. It's every cinematographer that I talked to who was like, even Florian Ballhaus, when we were doing She-Hulk, his question for me was like, how do you get so much ad work? And then I'm always asking like these narrative guys, I'm like, how are you getting all this work? And how do you go from one thing to the next? That balance of going back and forth, especially as a director of photography, there are guys who have done it, and it feels like it takes, like, you have to have like some signature piece. Like, I feel like Bob Yeoman to me is, and maybe I'm just very aware of his career because I lose jobs to Bob all the time. And so we have a number of directors that I've worked with that he, that I'm like, crap, Bob's got that job. But I think I like to say I'm his backup guy, I'm Bob Yeoman's backup guy. But, he's been somebody who obviously has, he was doing a lot of TV and doing other things, and then he hit it with Wes Anderson on that feature film that, on the feature that they make, the short and then feature. I think he did the short anyway, but and then that's enough to put him on the map, and people know who he is, and he's a commodity, and then he very easily goes back to commercials. Sometimes they're kind of two different worlds, and they operate at a different pace and a different schedule because of how the jobs come in. So like in commercials, I oftentimes don't know my schedule about 2 weeks out. And so that's typically about how far in advance I'll be booking jobs. I can see about a week and a half, 2 weeks into my future, and that's usually about it.
Wow.
With features, it's a totally different thing. You're working and securing things that are, a few months out. So it's a different pace and so oftentimes, and there's directors that are very good friends of mine, and they bust me all the time on this, but I get a little nervous about taking narrative work that is 2 or 3 months in the future, because I'm like, I don't know what commercials I'm going to be turning down in order to do that narrative. And so you get a little bit like, it's hard to combine those worlds. I'm not giving you any answers about how to succeed at it. I'm just saying it's tough. But if you're good, if you're really good, and you're good to work with, people will continue to hire you. And so that's the key. And that's the key that is to success, is be good and be really good to work with. And both of those things will eventually prevail, I think.
Yeah. Love that. Great answer. I'm going back a little. Hey, Doug, this is John Murphy. It's been a while. Do you think it's still important to follow through a full camera department system before becoming a DP? Okay, for those, this is highly technical. At least I don't understand it. So maybe give us some context and answer as quickly but as full as you feel you need to.
Okay. The short answer is no. You can get a lot of help. Like, you can jump straight to DPing, but you're going to miss some things. Like, you have to go back and get kind of technical. The role really is a place where, the technical meets the art. So you have to have like, I always like refer to, these camera assistants and DITs, like, they're like scientists, and you need to have these like good scientists behind you that really understand what's going on. And more, the electric department is also becoming, there's some scientists in that department now, because everything's wireless and everything, all the LEDs that we're using. So there is a technical aspect to this, because what happens is a director comes to you with these creative ideas, and you've got to figure out how to make that actually happen on set. So that's the job, is supporting this vision. So at some point you need to learn both sides of it. But my advice would be to be a terrible camera assistant, so that you have no other option but to move up.
That's right. That's right. You've got one place to go, and that's up.
You gotta know it, but you also don't be too good at it. If you're really good at it, people will keep hiring you.
Yeah, incredible.
Don't tell my camera assistant that. He's really good, and I like him.
Okay, here's another BYU film student. I've mostly worked in producing and directing, but I really want to understand more about cinematography. What would you say is the best thing a director or producer can do to help a cinematographer feel empowered? Good question.
Best thing for a director and a producer to do to make a cinematographer feel empowered. Yeah, that's like an interesting. I guess I've always looked at it the other direction. That I'm always trying to figure out how to help a director feel empowered. Like I've had this director that I worked with who had never done a feature film, and we were doing it with we had some big talent. James Franco, he was a fine artist. His name was Carter, and he's lovely and wonderful and one of my favorite people on earth. But he had a relationship with James Franco, and we brought in Catherine Keener and David Strathairn, and it was a great cast. And he had never directed a film before, and he was like a fine artist, did like paintings and sculptures and things like that. And he wanted to make in his head, he was just like, I want this to be a big, cool feature film. And really it was like an art film is what we were making. And people hate it. I love it. It's one of my favorite films that I've done. It was one of my favorite experiences working on a film. The challenges were like insane, and I feel like we did an amazing job at it. But some people hate it. But that's because it's an art film. Anyway, all I'm saying is that he would come to me because he didn't have that much experience directing, and so he would be like, I want to do this shot from like way up high so I can see the chandelier, and I want to shoot the people through the chandelier on this shot. And I'm like, great, let's do it. And what I found is that like production managers and producers were telling him no on things, because they were kind of treating him like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not how we do things. We're not going to do it. And that really bugged me. And my whole goal with him was like, just give him a finder, a director's finder and a lens, and just be like, you go find something that's fun that you want to shoot, and I'll figure out how to incorporate that shot into the coverage. And so depending on what side of the line I'm on, or depending on how the scene is built and blocking and all this stuff, as like I could figure out how to support what he wanted to do. And I feel like that is usually where I'm coming from as a DP, because you really are in a supportive role. The stewardship that you have is to the script and to the director creatively, but then it's also your stewardship is like the producer is handing you money. It's like they're like, we need you to bring this thing. We need every shot that we need in order to make the edit work, and we need it to fit in this box of money. And if it doesn't, we're screwed. And then you also have to kind of work with the director, taking all the creative things that need to happen to tell the story and have the vision of what's happening. So both of those things kind of, that's really what you're doing as a DP. So I always feel like I'm the one in the supportive role trying to figure out how to empower and embolden them so that they can go and do their job. Because for them to get mired in my, and my stupidity and like, what lens I'm on, or, what filter I've got, or like, they just need that support so they can do the stuff that they need to do.
Yeah. Love it. Great answer.
I don't know if that helps.
I think so. I think it was great. We have Matt Arnson that wants to come on. Wanted to ask if you have a favorite camera system or a set of lenses. Any preferences?
I shoot on the Sony Venice, and lately I love anamorphic, and there's all kinds of anamorphic lenses that I love, and for different reasons and different personalities. I just shot on a set of, master anamorphics that I think are too clean. but they're amazing and beautiful, and they were beautiful to look at. But so sometimes it just depends on the project. But yeah, you kind of have to be a little bit of a nerd on what these lenses are doing, because oftentimes directors want to have those conversations, and they're fun to have. So you got to be into it. I shoot a lot on the Tokina Vista Primes. I had an old vintage set of Ultranons, is what they were called, and I just got rid of them not too long ago. So I don't know. I like vintage glass. I like the Tokinas because they are velvety, for a word. They're velvety. They have low chromatic aberration. We can get into some techie stuff, but yeah, they're clean without being clinical. I kind of like them. Yeah. They're good all around.
Good. Jacob, hey Doug, super cool to hear your insights. I'm a BYU film advertising student. What's the key difference in your approach with narrative versus advertising? Does pre-production, production look different for you?
Yes. All those things get different. The ad world, oftentimes they're coming to you even with like a fully fleshed out idea with a lot of people who've touched it, and they know what elements they want to get done. So sometimes you feel a little bit like a gun for hire, like you're just coming in and trying to make it, make it all work and get them what they need. It's not always like that. Sometimes there's some real creative, fun stuff to do in the commercial side, but on the narrative side, it's always going to be about the script and starting with the scene and just kind of going through and making a checklist. This guy, Chris Bowman, that I worked with as a director, he used to call it, in this scene, we have like the do right dozen. We have a dozen things we got to get right. And I love that approach of, if you can just boil it down to 12 things that you got to get right in this scene. I think that really, I don't know if he ever
genius.
I don't think he realized how much that influenced me later on as I would start shooting other narratives after working with him. I used that phrase a lot to say, in this scene, we need to just whatever the things are in that scene that we need to get out of that scene in order to move on to the next scene. So you kind of start from a script, and they're fun and magical to work on, when you're working with people you love.
Yeah. That's great. This is a similar question to one that we addressed earlier, but let's see if you have a slightly different thought process on it. What's your
perspective? Give you a totally different answer.
Yeah, exactly. What's your perspective on work in LA right now? What is your favorite part of the cinematography process on set? So two very different questions, but work in LA, just be honest with us, it's not, you said it's tough a few times, right? It's not easy right now.
It's like it's been slow out here, and everybody knows production is down, and what's it going to take to revive it? And I'm not an expert on that, but I do feel like, when they were building the streaming services, it felt like, every studio was in an arms race to make as much content as they could, and eventually you have to stop making so much content. So I don't know. I feel like it's picking up a little bit out here. I don't know if I know there's a lot of stuff that's chased away from LA, and I wonder sometimes if we've created a situation like, do we need to make movies here anymore? Where are we going to make movies? It seems like there's a lot of that. There's a lot of questions about that, but I don't know. I keep working, so maybe I'm in my own little bubble, and I feel like whatever, I just keep going. And there's always going to be room for people to tell stories, and it's so powerful. It really impacts us. There's truth that can be carried in a story that kind of can't be carried any other way. Sometimes I feel like, you can have a narrative film that carries more truth than like a documentary or I mean, if I was to go back and try and recreate what I did accurately last week and make a film about it, I would get it all wrong. It's like, I really can't go back and be accurate in my description of what I did even last week. And so what I can be accurate on is like emotions and things I felt, and when I see something in a film that strikes me as true, it can reach my heart. And so I think that's why storytelling will always be there. So, but I don't know exactly what the future of LA is going to look like.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, great. That was wonderful. Jacob has a question, and then I think we're going to give you just a few moments at the end just to say whatever you want to say to wrap it up and give final thoughts. Yeah, so
Okay.
impress us, no pressure.
Yeah.
Jacob says this: in advertising, are you able to pitch different visual ideas to them that you think would work better? Or is it mainly only in narrative that you have more creative ownership?
Yes, and it depends. Sometimes no. Sometimes I'm given like an animatic and it's like, you need to do exactly this. And it's like, then that's the job. That's the fun of it, is like trying to figure out how to make it look exactly like the animatic. I've done plenty of those jobs where it's being dictated and you just have to do that. There's other times that people will come to you and you've got a lot more creative control. Narrative, you do typically end up with a lot more input on the creative side. But even then, sometimes it's you're not always, not as much as you would think, sometimes. And then sometimes you're like, whoa, boy, I didn't think I was going to have to come up with all the shots for this. I thought you guys would have something put together, so it can be a mixed bag, and you have to be able to be nimble, and you have to be able to know it. And again, like figure out how the director wants to be supported. And sometimes the directors want a lot of input, and sometimes they don't want any input on lensing, and and then sometimes they completely leave you alone on lighting, and you can literally just come up with whatever you want to do. And sometimes they get heavily involved, and but you're always trying to take the lighting and have it be things that are supportive to the. I mean, this is the big problem with lighting, right? This is like, if you notice the lighting, I've probably screwed up. You want it to be almost invisible. You want it to be just exactly right, exactly perfect. I feel like somebody like Roger Deakins has mastered this, where it's like, you can watch his films and you can just totally get lost in the story and what's going on, and you're not thinking about the light. And then when you go back through, you're like, dang, this is perfectly lit. This is exactly where the camera was supposed to be, and this is exactly what this light should look like. And even when he's doing stuff that is sci-fi in nature, you're like, but it looks so appropriate for that scene and for the emotion. And so it just kind of disappears even when it's beautiful. And I think this is like, to tie it back to some spiritual, the spiritual nature of things. I do think that this is, if you take the sun as an example, right? It's like, we do have this sun that sits up in the air, and it's like to just look at light and go, oh, like the beauty of lighting. It's so amazing. And I just love it. It's like, it's not really what we're photographing. And yet light is the only thing that we're photographing. It's like literally, that's literally how we create our images. But just the glory of the light is not enough, to just shoot rays of light and flares and things like that. It's like, that doesn't really do much for you. Like, the purpose of it is to illuminate the scene and the truth that is there, and connecting with you and getting your heart involved. And so I think it's, the sun is literally like that, right? It's out there and it's supporting us. And you can take that analogy and place God or place Christ as the sun. And it's like, when we have that sun out there, it's like, it's doing all of these things, right? It is holding the earth in rotation. It is like reaching down into the chaotic waters and pulling up and drawing forth the waters and putting it in the air and creating this living water that falls upon the earth and creates life. And then through photosynthesis, you have this, you have the plants that receive that that energy from the sun and turns it into something that we can put into our bodies, and it feeds animals, and then we eat plants and animals, and it's like, so everything is sustained, you know, and yet it has these moments, right, with the sun. It's like where we are, you know, are we just to worship the sun? It's like, yes, we worship the sun, maybe not the physical sun, but we worship God. But what's the purpose of that sun? That sun is there so that we can have this experience here in this on earth. And it's about those connections that we make with other people. And it's about the families that we raise. And it's about the relationships that we have with each other, and this mortal experience that we have here on earth to experience and to be tried and to grow. That's what the sun is there for. And so it's the same thing with lighting. We have these moments where, sure, we can do something beautiful and amazing, but it's like, who cares? It's like the sun is actually very functional, and that's what makes it beautiful. But sometimes I think we do this in cinematography where you have people who are just like, I just want to shoot rainbows and sunsets. And it's like, great, it's beautiful, but it doesn't hit me the way a well-told story can hit me. And so I think we're kind of in that same world. I don't know if I'm clearly connecting, you know, the physical and the metaphysical and then tying it back to film. But those, you know, I spend a lot of time thinking about light and thinking about the attributes of light. And so it sent me down a lot of different roads. And so it's, most of my struggles in my career have been like, what do I do with the light? What should I do? And looking at it sincerely and trying to discover, you know, what it's doing and how it's doing its thing. So I do feel like a spiritual connection to light, I think, because of that. And as my kids will tell you, it's like I will oftentimes go to that well of analogy with light, which I could literally speak for the next 2 hours on and get into the periodic table of elements and start talking about how hydrogen really connects with all of them. I don't know. I really enjoy it. And I think there's some correlation there.
Yeah, wonderful. Beautiful. Well, I honestly think that may have been the best way you could have closed this 1 hour session we have together. Just beautiful. I do want to give you time, though, if you have last thoughts, if you didn't feel like that was how you wanted to close. Do you have anything final you'd like to say to this audience, this group of young students that are going to be out there in the next few years?
Boy, something profound, something amazing. I don't know if I wish I had something really, really amazing. I don't know. I think it's, you know, I love the career, and it's been an amazing journey. But it's always going to be about your relationships with your neighbors, to put it back into a scriptural term. It's like the best things that I have found is the people that I get to work with, and they are creative and interesting, and they are the thing that kind of keeps the whole thing going. That's the best thing about being on set, is having those relationships. And it doesn't matter at all if you're working on something that, like, I know that when I was going through film school, especially BYU, there was always conversation about, I know I'm over, but there's always conversations about, like, are you going to do like beer commercial, or are you going to do like a sex scene or whatever? And it's like, I've done a lot of different things that maybe don't align with, you know, my personal beliefs. But at a certain point, I had a friend who told me that all work is noble, because what you're doing is you're supporting your family, and what you're doing with that exchange of time for resources. And that's really, like, stuck with me. And I've tried to build those relationships with my crew and have a commitment to them, and learn how to live the law of consecration with these people that I work with. And there's so much opportunity to experiment with living, like trying to become one with people and trying to show love to them by laying down your life and laying down your own interests and picking up other people's interests and helping them along. Man, that stuff applies so well to working in film, and you just get opportunities every single week. It's a new opportunity to meet somebody new and to try and create life with that person and create a relationship. And if that isn't living like gospel principles, it's like, I really don't know what is. I know that there's a lot of, faith-based films out there, and they don't resonate with people, and they don't feel honest and they don't feel true. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, they're missing something there, and I think we just have such a great opportunity to just practice it. You're only going to be able to, I can only work in those things that I have stewardship over. And so of those things that I have stewardship over, I may not have stewardship over the message, and I may not have stewardship over all the things that the director has or the producer has, but inside my sphere of influence, inside those things that I can control, I hope that I'm living gospel principles inside of that box. And that's all I'm trying to do. And you can do that very, very easily and very successfully, and combine that with art and commerce, and you can do all of it.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. What a great way to go. Well, Doug Chamberlain, the best cinematographer, hat tip to you.
Cinematographer
in the business. Thank you again for your time. We sure appreciate it. And we will be back talking to other people, maybe not as interesting as Doug, but at least fairly well known in their field in future installments. But Doug, thank you again. So good to be with you.
Yeah, good to be with you also.